Hello everyone, welcome back to Just My Stupid Opinion for the first Ontario Leaders Debate.
You profit from fear and hate, hoarding wealth and amassing power. The walls have been unleashed. We will not submit or cower. It's humanity's darkest side. We are ruled by thieves and liars.
Alright, let's try this again, because I was trying to stream the debate earlier and that just had a whole host of problems. I just could not get the stream to actually run properly for me. And I actually ended up having one or two other people that mentioned that the stream wasn't working for them either. So I think it may have just been City News that was not streaming properly. I don't know if other people were managed to watch it online or had any problems like me, but personally, it's not doing any favors for, of my opinion, of City News, because on top of that, one thing that they ended up doing was after the debate was done, I decided I was going to go back so I could do this again and comment on it. And it turns out that they ended up clipping it into 7 different parts. Now, I'm not opposed to actually clipping it, but there's no one single stream of the entire debate left. Everything has been clipped into these 7 parts, and now you have to go through each individual 7 parts to do it. So that's going to be a pain in the ass, and of course every single one has to have a 30-second commercial in front of it just to, piss you off a little bit more. But I haven't watched the debate yet, so I don't really know what the outcome was. I know that right now there's a couple things that I do know. I know that at least the media, a lot of them are saying that Andrea Horwath ended up winning this debate. We'll see about that. And the second thing is that apparently Doug Ford triggered some feminists on Twitter, because I don't know what was said, but all I know is he made some reference to Kathleen Wynne about how math is hard and that, she's got a good smile at least or something, and ooh, plenty of feminists on Twitter were pissed the fuck off, raging about him mansplaining. So I'm looking forward to this, but then at the same time, a lot of people that did seem to watch the debate online on social media were saying that was really not much to this, that there was not a lot of meat. So we'll end up seeing, we'll go through the whole thing and we'll make our commentary. And actually, I suppose the one good thing about doing it after the debate's done, about doing this sort of thing, is the ability to pause and continue or mute rather than so one thing about doing it live is, if you want to put any commentary in, you're going to have to cut into the actual debate itself. So at least here I can sort of pause and go as I please. So I guess without any further ado, let's get into this again.
All right, we're about to get started. Now, we have done a random draw, which determines the order that the leaders are standing, as well as the order of the questions and who will answer.
And that was actually part 1, was just the draws for the opening statements, closing statements, yada yada. So I didn't even bother bringing it up.
Who have formulated their own questions. The leaders know the topics. They do not know anything beyond that. And the other thing that we're doing here tonight is we are giving the leaders a chance to put one of their opponents on the hot seat. Each leader will ask the person of the choice a question. We do not know what that question will be. The ground rules, very simple. You each have 45 seconds to answer a question, followed by 3 minutes of debate. When you hear this sound, familiar? Everyone? Anyone who takes transit? That's a streetcar bell.
Oh, so none of the
That means
politicians
when
know what
bell
that is then.
sounds, your time is up. So, it's time to get started. Let's get this rolling. We are going to start with 60-second opening statements. Andrea Horwath, you are up. Starting now.
Well, it's good to see Andrea Horwath around.
I have to say I'm very excited to be here this evening to show folks that to this election, you really can choose change for the better. As we enter this campaign period, we have people...
Alright, hopefully that stays paused on me, because City News is still a bitch website. But all I was going to say, it's nice to actually see Andrea Horwath around and make her presence known, because, she hasn't been around anywhere in the last 4 fucking years, and whenever she has popped up, it's never for good reasons. I mean, the first time that I can remember really taking notice of Andrea Horwath was when my college strike was on the go, and after 5.5 weeks, she still didn't want back to work legislation, even though the students were missing out. So that there alone, just being a student, isn't going to give me her vote. But then, anytime she has popped up, she's just voted in tandem with the Liberals, so we can't expect anything different from Andrea Horwath. And if you've taken a look at her plan online, she wants to throw a lot of money in certain industries, certain sectors, but there's a difference between throwing money and resources at a sector.
Lined up in hospital hallways. We have a hydro system that's been sold off and the bills are skyrocketing. People are feeling the squeeze. Families are having a harder and harder time making a go of it. But it absolutely does not have to be this way. We can have a government that makes sure that our hospitals are there for people when they need them, that our schools are in a good state of repair, that people can get the dental care and the prescription drugs that they need, that families can afford child care. These are changes for the better. Mr. Ford is going to offer more cuts.
Well, first of all, I was going to say that socialism has never offered any of this shit, which is what Andrea Horwath is presenting to us. She's trying to act as if her policies are going to take us out of poverty rather than put us into poverty. And you know what? I can already tell where she's going for this, going about Doug Ford and the cuts. Well, you need to make cuts if you want to balance the budget. You need to make cuts if you want to start paying off our huge, unbelievably huge provincial debt. And this is not what we're going to get under Andrea Horwath. We're going to get an even bigger debt,
which will only make life harder. It doesn't have to be that way. You can have a premier in our province that puts the people at the heart of every single decision that she makes, and that's my plan for the province of Ontario. Welcome tonight.
Well, if the people are what she's focusing on, then then the NDP is not the right party for it. If you are concerned about having the power in the hands of the people, don't vote NDP.
All right, Kathleen Wynne.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for being here, and all of the folks at home. Thank you for...
She is the devil incarnate. Throw some holy water on her.
Watching. When I came into this office in 2013 and then was re-elected in 2014, I made a commitment to the people of Ontario that I would build this province up, and I've been doing that every single day. We have built 800 schools, 24 new hospitals. There is transit being built all around the province.
Excuse me? Now, I wish City News this website was better at actually pausing on time, but building up Ontario, is that what you call that tremendous amount of debt? Do you call that building up Ontario? And no, she hasn't done anything over the last fucking 4 years. But then as soon as the election's right around the corner, she's just going to start throwing money every which way. And again, more people are in a harder situation now because of the minimum wage hike. So she hasn't done anything to build up Ontario.
Province roads and bridges. The economy is growing faster than other parts of the country.
So's the debt.
Faster than the United States. And our unemployment rate
no, it's not.
The lowest it's been in nearly 20 years. So we need to continue, and the next thing that we need to do is put more care in place for people. People who are looking for mental health supports for their children, folks who are looking for childcare, people who are looking for care for their elderly parents. Those care pieces need to be in place, and that's exactly what our platform lays out. There's a very stark contrast that people are going to see in this election. It's a contrast between a care plan and a cut plan that Doug Ford is bringing forward. That's the choice.
And that's time. Doug Ford.
Once again, you need to do fucking cuts in order to actually get this debt under control. Because right now, Canada has only a fraction of the population of California, but our debt is a good 3 times more than what they have. So this has all been done underneath the McGuinty/Wynne Liberals. So this is... Just every time Kathleen Wynne opens her mouth to speak, just imagine bile coming spewing out, a bile of lies. That's exactly what you can expect out of Kathleen Wynne.
Yeah, thank you. After 15 years of Liberal mismanagement, scandal, and waste, it's time for change. We have seen this Liberal government make sure that they've taken care of their Liberal insider friends and Liberal insiders, lobbyists, But we can tell you one thing, my friends. We will make sure we bring government that's going to respect the taxpayers. You know me, I'm for the little guy. I will make sure my priorities are reducing the wait times in hospitals, straightening out the hydro mess, creating good paying jobs, and putting money back into your pocket. I will bring accountability, transparency, and integrity back to the people of Ontario. We will make sure we run a government for the people. Time for change.
Time for change. That would be nice for sure. Some bit of a time for change. But as we can see already from the way that these people are talking, that it is clear that the situation in the hospitals are going to become a big talking point in this election. That is really going to be one of the main focus are the hospitals. And right now, the doctors and nurses do not like Kathleen Wynne. They do not like her whatsoever. They blame her for a lot of her for the situation that we're in Ontario for these doctors and nurses. They're being burnt out. They can't take much more. And so don't vote for Kathleen Wynne if you actually care about the hospitals. And for me, one of the other reasons that I don't think that Andrea Horwath's plan is going to work is because she wants to throw money at the hospitals, but you need more than that. You can throw money, but we don't have the people. What you need are resources. And one reason that I'm willing to put more trust in what Ford says when talking about this over what Wynne says or Andrea Horwath is the fact, even recently, Ford had I think it was his mother that was in the hospital. So and he was there witnessing the firsthand the wait times that we had in the hallway care. And so this is something why I believe he actually will put effort into fixing it and will put effort into driving down wait times and actually putting more people and encouraging more people to go into the medical field.
And with that, we'll begin with our first question, and it's about policing. It comes from a woman who knows firsthand the difference that de-escalation training can make. For some context, we're going to show you a piece from a City News exclusive we aired last summer.
The 911 call just moments before Michael McIsaac is shot in Ajax in December of 2013. Joanne plays it from her computer in a basement that's crammed with boxes of independent investigations her family has paid for.
We hired a forensic scientist here in Mississauga to analyze all the audio recordings that we had. We've hired 2 investigators.
Joanne McIsaac is highly critical of the SIU investigation that cleared Durham police in her brother's death. She has more than a handful of times met with the judge who will later this week release recommendations on the first major overhaul of the SIU in more than 2 decades.
I'm optimistic he's going to suggest a lot of change, but do I think it's going to happen? No.
And Joanne is here with us this evening.
So I don't actually know about her brother's story, so I don't know if what ended up happening with that.
Today is Michael's 52nd birthday.
So what is your question to the leaders?
Recently, the province passed a bill that was intended to address long-standing policing issues. That bill includes nothing about de-escalation training for police that would prevent what happened to my brother from happening again. What de-escalation training would you mandate province-wide to ensure more outcomes like the one Toronto Constable Ken Lamb had during the tragic van attack on Yonge Street?
And your first, first answer will go.
The first problem I have with this, and I'm actually just going to reload the page, so I'm hoping that it'll run a little bit better. So what is our time that we're at? What time is it? See, City News sucks. Their website sucks. But anyway, the one thing I was going to say is where I at least feel that this is not a good equation on her part for the question is the fact that I don't know what happened in her story with her brother, whether her brother actually did do something that warranted the police to shoot or whether it was an unlawful killing. I really don't know. However, if she seems to be under the impression that her brother was killed by the police when he shouldn't have, that he was killed because because the police weren't trained properly. This is not even close to the same situation that we faced in Toronto just a couple of weeks ago, because that guy literally did run down a bunch of people deliberately. He murdered almost a dozen people, and he injured a hell of a lot more. So she is praising the cop for his de-escalation in that situation, but I actually believe, and I think many people would agree, that in that situation, especially because the guy was imitating the use of a gun, the cop actually would have been warranted to shoot for his own safety and for the safety of others. And this was an actual terrorist attack that went on, not just a single-handed situation. So I don't actually believe that this is a good equation that she's making. But we'll see how this plays out, because definitely the de-escalation has been a big talking point over the last couple of weeks because of what happened in Toronto, because of that officer, how he didn't shoot and he managed to take down Alec Manation. That has been a big one. A lot of people are using it to show the difference between American cops and Canadian cops. But one thing, too, is that with this comparison is we don't live in the same society that America lives in. And American cops, yes, it definitely happens, but it doesn't happen as much as people like to believe. Now, we're about a minute 40.
Here's another question for RBC.
Are you kidding me? It literally just gave me 2 commercials in a row. This is why I fucking hate City News and their goddamn website. I can't stand it, because this is the sort of shit they pull. They break their streams into 7 parts, they don't run very well, and now you're going to give me a bunch of fucking commercials so I can't even watch the debate. God damn, I hate City News so fucking much. And that's enough for my rant.
And with that, we'll begin with our first question, and it's about police.
There we go. 141.
Miss Horwath, your 45 seconds starts now.
First of all, Joanne, I have to say that it was heartbreaking to see what happened to your brother Michael, and I'm sorry that today, of all days, is your brother's birthday, but it does give us a good opportunity to talk about what's missing and what went right in the horrific aftermath of the van attack. Look, there's no doubt that de-escalation training needs to happen with every single officer across all police forces across the province, and right now, apparently, it's quite different. Depending on where you're from and what community you're serving, you can have 3 minutes of training, or you can have 3 hours of training, or more than that. But in order to get that training, we need to make sure that we have the resources available to fund for it. I think Mr. Ford's cuts are going to hurt that opportunity.
His cuts are going to hurt that opportunity? Like, he never even stated anything about, he hasn't stated anything about cutting cuts to the police. This is just, she's pulling this out of her ass to say that about Ford, and she also at the same time hasn't answered what she's going to do. She just talks about how there's different training. Oh, and by the way, that whole thing about 3 minutes of training for a cop is complete horseshit. Cops get more training than that. At least give them a little more credit than that. And the thing is, too, is there is going to be different policing where you are, because we have different levels of police. You have local, you have provincial, you have federal. So, of course, the training is going to be different.
Thank you. And now to Mr. Ford.
Oh, yeah, they're also dealing with different communities across the country, so that also makes a difference.
Your 45 seconds begins now.
Joanne, I'm so sorry to hear what happened to Michael. I can assure you, we will put the proper training in for de-escalation. We will focus on every single police services across this province to make sure we take appropriate actions when it comes to de-escalation. Thank you.
And Miss Wynne, your 45.
I'm kind of in the same boat as I was with Andrea Horwath. It's different because of the different levels, and I don't think you can actually standardize it. I mean, I guess my example before, I was kind of talking across Canada rather than across Ontario, and that makes a difference because this is the Ontario premier debate. But I still kind of stand by what I say. It's different areas, different training, and different levels of policing, so it's going to be different from where you go. It's possible that they could standardize it in some way, but I don't know how much.
5 seconds starts now.
Thank you. It's very important that everyone in this province feels safe in the community, and I want to just reinforce what you said, Joanne, about the horrific incident with the van attack and Constable Ken Lamb, and how well he was able to deal with that horrific situation. The fact is that there is training mandated across the province. If it is uneven, we need to deal with that, but the province has put funding in place to support that training, and I believe that there is more that needs to be done, particularly in making sure that small police forces and police forces in every part of the province have the resources that they need, and we will work on that to add to what has already been mandated and is in place.
All right.
Well, she didn't go into detail about what's mandated and put in place underneath her government, and this is actually the problem I have with Wynne and Andrea Horwath, is their only plan in everything they want to do is throw more money at it. Throw more money at it, throw more money at it, throw more money at it, it'll be good. Now, money does help without a doubt. Money will always help a situation. But when the problem is lack of people, lack of resources, or lack of training, just throwing money at the problem is not going to be enough.
Right. We are going to begin the clock now. We have 3 minutes for open debate.
I want to say one thing specifically, and that is, it has been 15 years. These incidents are not new. The tragedy of Michael's death is not the first in our province, nor has it been the last.
No, she's right. There's absolutely, this has gone on, but at the same time, they're trying to act like every single police shooting is some sort of fucking murder. There's plenty of situations where the cops pull their guns and fire for legitimate situations. So I don't know where she's going with this, as if this is actually... I don't actually think you can blame this one on Wynne and say that this is Wynne's doing. And again, we're also... the way they're presenting it is they're presenting it as if we're America right now. Like, we have as many cop shootings as we do. We have very few cop shootings per year. Our homicide rate is pretty low. And of the people who commit homicide, a very small percentage of that is the police. So they're trying to act like we have this problem where every friggin' weekend somebody is getting shot to death by the police.
And so we've seen a government that has not taken up the appropriate measures. And that's worrisome, because after 15 years, we would think that we would have consistency in place and proper funding in place to make sure that that training is happening. But instead, the bill that you're talking about, which I'm very worried about, Joanne, actually opens the door to privatization in our police forces. Well, and so we have to be a little bit worried about not only what that bill does in terms of privatization of existing policing, but also about Mr. Ford's plans for privatization. The last thing we need is less accountability. The last thing we need is less opportunity to make a difference in
what the
people's
bill
lives.
is about is
Okay.
making sure that there is adequate oversight.
All right, let's pause now. Now, what I was going to say on this is, while I will admit that I'm not in favor of having a complete privatized police force, absolutely not. But one thing that comes with privatization, actually, a lot of times, is more accountability. Because one thing about a privatized cop is that the cop can lose his job. Now, there's been plenty of times we've seen where cops should have should have at least gone to trial, but they end up getting off. Now, usually you'll see this more in America than Canada. But, crap, where was I going with that? Damn, fuck my memory sometimes. I start talking and then I'll lose where my train of thought was going with that. Oh, privatization, right. But there actually is a lot of times more privatization, and it has been underneath having public cops where that becomes a problem, where they actually have found that the cops are defending each other and then they're not having the accountability that they should. So I'm not saying that we should have privatized cops, but if she's going to try and suggest that privatization doesn't mean more accountability, well, really, we just need to look at everything that's gone on in Justin Trudeau government. He is nobody in their government has been charged or had any accountability for what they've done, even when it's been illegal, like when Justin Trudeau broke 4 of the ethics code, the first prime minister ever to break an ethics code. No accountability for that.
That there is the ability for police officers to do their job and do the job that they are trained to do, and that they have the training to do that. That's what the legislation is about. You know, I know that ideologically you are going to want to talk about privatization of everything. We are not privatizing policing. We are not
opening the door for municipalities
we
to
are
be
not
able to do that,
privatizing
though.
policing.
That's
What we're
the
saying to
problem.
municipalities is, let's make sure that police officers have the training that they need to do the job that they are trained to do. That's what we're saying. And we have put in place funding to actually support that training.
If we have accountability issues already, which this bill purports to address, and we supported that bill, you know that we did. We had some
course you
concerns
did.
about it, though. Concerns about privatization.
When had the
concerns
NDP
about
gone
impacts
against the
on
Liberals?
police force, and we have to be honest about the fact that privatization of policing will remove
But that's
the
not what we're doing.
opportunity for oversight. But then
But
why
that's
is it
not
in the
what
bill?
we're doing.
Then why
That's
is
not
it in
what
the
we're
bill
doing.
if that's
What we're
not you're
doing is making sure that police services have the opportunity to allow police officers to do the job that they're trained to do. And, you know, to the point that you made earlier, I think that we need to be really concerned about the cuts that you've said you're going to make across all of the services that government provides, Doug. You know, it is not possible to cut $6 billion out of government services and not hurt people, not hurt police services, not hurt health and education. So that's really what I think this election is going to come down to. Are we going to invest more in the supports people need, including...
Now, first of all, she said it was $6 billion. I'm pretty sure it's $4 billion because that's how much the carbon tax was going to bring in that Doug Ford wanted to scrap, and then that's where he was talking about the cuts need to be made in order to, because the budget wouldn't balance, it'd be $4 billion. Now, on top of this, I'm going to say that I actually think it's more damaging when you come out with a budget and then it turns out that the deficit that you promised was about double of what it actually was that you put in your budget, because that's exactly what came out of Kathleen Wynne's 2018 budget. I'm pretty sure that is more damaging than what she's suggesting. And at the same time, why would Doug Ford, of all places, they're always cut in the police? Why would he make cuts to the police? Or why would he make cuts to the doctors and medical? He knows this is areas where people don't want to see cuts. Obviously, people don't want to see cuts in the hospitals because then they're not going to get the care they want. They don't want to see cuts in the police because then they won't have the protection that they want. So clearly this is not where Doug Ford is coming from. But there are a lot of people right now that are already getting paid more than they should for working in the public sector. So maybe you start by cutting down some of their six-figure salaries. Maybe that's one good way that you could start with that. And then again, Kathleen Wynne has been so inefficient when she writes budgets, and the entire Ontario Liberal caucus is so inept of balancing the budget or doing anything right. Jesus Christ.
Including police services, or are we going to cut the services that people need, which is actually what you're putting forward? So I think that's the pretty stark choice that people are going to be confronting in this election.
You know, Kathleen, one thing I won't do, and it is in the bill, about privatizing police. It's very clear if you don't want to privatize the police, it wouldn't be inside the bill. Number one, we're going to make a standardization right across the province to be consistent in every single police services. We will make sure that we do testing every year to make sure that this never happens again. It's a tragedy. We all agree. One thing we agree, it was an absolute tragedy.
So
It
if
should not happen.
Tragedy.
So, Mr. Ford,
we will make sure we have standard training.
And I agree with
and
that.
I will make sure the police have the resources. You've been cutting their resources. I'm going to make sure we support the police. You actually did cut resources to the police.
What are you talking about, Doug?
Definitely to the medical sector.
Cut resources.
You're talking about Tavis?
When it came to guns and gangs, you've cut policing.
No, so that money, the money that went into that Tavis force went into community policing. The money was not cut. It was redirected into community policing. So you should know that, Doug.
No,
you should know that that money was not cut.
If you said you're going to make cuts across every ministry, you're going to leave no stone unturned. What are you going to cut in the corrections ministry and in the community safety ministry?
There's
I think you need to be
him
upfront
answer,
with
please.
people about exactly what it is that you're going to cut. You have to be honest about it.
Well, there's two things that my friends have never done. They have never, ever looked at efficiencies in their entire life. We have seen waste. We have seen scandal. We have seen mismanagement of your hard-earned tax dollars. We're the most indebted region in the entire world, the largest subnational debt, $350 $164 billion because you've mismanaged the taxpayers' money. You believe in one thing. You believe, Kathleen?
I don't know why I paused there. I'm not sure what's going on right now.
Is
Okay.
tax,
Tax,
spend.
spend.
You know what?
Absolutely, that is all she has done.
We're going to come back.
Absolutely, that is all Kathleen Wynne done. All she has done is tax the shit out of the people of Ontario every single chance she has gotten, and then she has spent it whenever she fucking can. Again, look at our debt in Ontario alone. That should say enough. And if you, better yet, go look at it, like, don't just look at our debt, but go watch the progression of our debt. You can go find it online pretty easily, where you can see over the course of the 2000s how Ontario's debt has just continued to have a sharper incline every single year.
We can come back to it at another time. Right now, we're going to move forward to our next question.
And our next question is another hot button policing issue, one that many communities say has plagued them for decades.
Just because I have headphones on, my hat's low, I deserve to be carded. That makes no sense.
I don't think that just looking at somebody walking and their race, that you should just say, hey, let's stop him because he looks like a criminal.
You're chilling outside of school, waiting for your friend to pick you up. And out of nowhere, a cop walks up to you and asks, let's see some ID, but you left your ID at home. What do you do?
Well, there's an app for everything, and now we also have an app to fight back against carding. And joining me now is Christian Levine from Brampton. You are the app creator.
That is correct.
So what made you come up with this idea?
Well, you know, I finished law school and I was doing a lot of legal rights workshops, and I realized I need to create something tangible to give to workshop participants or even those who couldn't come out and be part of the workshops themselves.
And Christian joins us live here tonight. Christian, thank you so much for joining us. What's your question?
Carding is now illegal, but it's still happening. If elected as premier, what specific steps would you take to ensure that police and their forces are being held accountable?
All right, Mr. Ford, your 45 seconds begins now.
Well, one thing, I'm not going to introduce carding.
All right. Allow me to be the asshole. Allow me to be that guy. Now, carding is illegal, as he stated. So, if police are doing the carding, that's not allowed. We have to accept that, and the police also have to accept that's the case. However, one thing that is people are bringing up on this is they're trying to turn this into a race thing, especially about them being black, is how this is why it's that the police are stereotyping them for the fact that they are black. Well, especially if we're talking about the Toronto area, I'm sorry that I gotta be that asshole to bring up the fact, but right now, the black community does commit a lot of crimes, especially in the Toronto area. So, I'm sorry I gotta be that asshole, but that's a fact. So, I understand if these people, especially people who have not committed any crimes, feel that they're being persecuted because of this. I understand where they're coming from. But they also have to realize that in their communities, right now, they do have a large, they do have a lot of people that commit crimes. And I'm sure it's going to come up that they're going to talk about the disproportionate amount of black people that are represented in prisons. Well, there's a reason for that. It's because a lot of them end up committing crimes and end up getting arrested. And on top of this isn't necessarily have to do with just the fact they're black. A lot of it has to do with the fact that the black family right now has been falling apart. That many, many, many children coming from a black family come from a single parent household. And what's been stated before about single parent households. Now, I think this is usually to do with when the mother is the only one in the house, but I think this can also apply when it's only a father in the house. Is you get one of the two things. Either you are a doormat to your child, so your child walks all over it, they don't have any rules, and they pretty much run the house. They turn into a shithead. Or their parents rule them as a dictator with an iron fist and keeps them scared, which again is not a healthy way to raise children. So I really think that these are the problems that come out of the black community. So when we're talking about carding, absolutely. If carding is legal, then cops should not be doing this because they are not allowed to do so. but we need to at least address the bigger problem.
And I'll have zero tolerance, absolute zero tolerance for anyone targeting someone based on the color of their skin. What I believe in community policing, getting the police involved with their community, working with the community, coming up with programs that are beneficial to the community and the police. That's what I believe. And I believe in also giving the police proper resources to do their job. Thank you.
Ms. Wynne, your 45 seconds begins now.
The practice of carding as...
There we go. So, as Ford said, he said that he was going to have zero tolerance for anybody who is targeted for the color of their skin. Now, that is something that maybe I did not say just a minute ago, but I do agree with him on that. Just targeting someone for the color of their skin is definitely the wrong way to go about it. It's a terrible way to go about it. But we have to realize at least why the police are more willing to card some African Americans, African Canadians, whichever term you prefer. There's a reason for it, and there's a reason that the black community is overrepresented inside the prison system, and that does not have to do with racism. It does not have to do with government trying to keep them down. There are other reasons for it. But yes, I agree with Ford. Just targeting someone because they happen to be black or Latino or whatever everything else it's definitely the wrong way to police.
And what that means is random street checks, police stopping people because of the way they look, because of the color of their skin, is illegal in Ontario. As you have said, I think it's great that you've developed the app. We've made it illegal. We brought in the law. There is an adjustment period. We are in that adjustment period.
All I was going to say is just, crap, yeah, I wish it had stopped a couple seconds beforehand, because again, I'm starting to lose my train of thought. But carding isn't necessarily just restricted to a certain race. It's not like when cops are carding people, they're only carding black people or anything like that. But it was supposed to give them the option. It was supposed to give them that ability to check someone's ID. But that doesn't mean that just because the carding was available, that it was only going to single-handedly go after black people.
There's a shift from a practice that was unacceptable and was unfair. We've made that illegal, and now we need to monitor. And we are doing that. We are monitoring the stats on when this is happening, where this is happening, and we need to make sure that it stops. And we will do that. But the law is in place because we know that it is unfair and it has to be stopped.
Thank you very much, Ms. Horwath. Your 45 seconds begins now.
Sure, thank you very much. And Christian, thank you for the question. And it's really a sad state of affairs that you had to even develop that app in the first place. And so thank you for taking that leadership role that you took. But it really does speak to the way that too many young people are treated, in their own communities, in their own neighborhoods. I mean, we have an overrepresentation of black youth in the criminal justice system. We have an overrepresentation of black children in the child welfare system.
Andrea Horwath, once again, is trying to suggest is this has something to do with carding, or is this something to do with racism or the government system that's in place? But that's not true, because when we're talking about overrepresentation on welfare, that has to do with single-parent household incomes, because a lot of time, these single parents, they end up having their children when they're young, which means they don't have a chance to go on and get a better education, improve their life, get a better job. So they're stuck working shitty jobs, sometimes multiple shitty jobs, and they rely on that welfare. Now, that's not just restricted to the black community. That is very common amongst anybody who happens to find themselves under a single-parent household. On top of that, there are other reasons why so many black people end up inside the prison system. In fact, a lot of places in Toronto, as much as people like to praise Toronto for the way it is, it's like anywhere else. Like, if it's like New York, you got your areas that are really nice, but then you've got the areas that are just crime-ridden, that you don't want to walk into. I mean, one of my friend's dads grew up in Toronto in one of the rough areas, and he's told me some pretty nasty stories about growing up there, and I only imagine that those situations in those areas have only gotten worse. So this is really why we have such a large representation inside of the prison system. This is why there's a lot of overrepresentation inside the welfare system. I mean, it doesn't give me pleasure to say any of this, but we have to at least be talking about facts here, or about what the real situation is. However, it's a lot easier for the government to say it's racism, and we're going to fight against that.
These are the results of 15 years of Liberal government. There should
How is
be
that the
no
Liberals'
carding.
fault?
There should be no loopholes to allow carding by another name. Carding should be banned in Ontario. New Democrats have been clear about that, and I will restate it now. Banning will not exist, carding will not exist under the NDP.
Thank you. And now our 3 minutes debate begins.
So the fact is that carding has been banned, and to suggest that this is a practice that's just started over a decade ago is just unrealistic. The reality is that many jurisdictions, including Ontario, have grappled with what is a manifestation of systemic racism. I mean, that's the reality. When someone is stopped because of their skin color or the way they look, that is systemic racism at work. And that's not to blame any one person or group. That's the reality that we deal with. We have brought in a law that
Well, then who are you blaming? If you're saying that's not the result of one particular group, then how the hell is it a systemic racism thing? Because when you're talking about racism, it is one race supposed to be discriminating against another race, whether that happens to be a group or an individual. So if you're saying that's...
We have brought in a law that says...
That's why I hate City. This is why I hate City. I mean, I just tried pausing it again, and they're still talking.
Change that behavior.
Yeah, this is why I fucking hate this goddamn website. It can't fucking work properly. But anyway, yeah, so she's saying that it's not any one person's fault or group's fault, but then how can she make this claim of systemic racism? Because it'd have to be one group or one individual. Either it's supposed to be white people that are being systemically racist to black people, or it's supposed to be the government that are systemically racist to black people. Well, which one is it, Kathleen? Because you're not really willing to take credit on either one. And the thing is, too, if you're going to talk about systemic racism, you have to show where the government or where this group is systematically being racist against them. Just talking about carding is not enough, because that was not specifically trying to repress an individual group. Now, if we were to talk something more about Jim Crow laws like they had in America, well, then absolutely, that makes a lot more sense if you're talking about that. But when you say systemic racism, it's a system of racism. So what is that system in place? Kathleen Wynne won't go talk about that. She won't go further into that idea. And why? Because if she actually got questioned on, if someone actually challenged her, she would have to prove where this is coming from. And she could talk about carding, but you say, well, the carding, nowhere in the carding laws that were in place did it say you could card black people or card Latinos, but you couldn't card white people or Asians or this or that and the other. So this is why she won't elaborate any further, because just going a little farther into the idea and it completely falls apart.
That's the period that we're in right now. We're monitoring this. I know that it's still happening in some places. I know that we have to be vigilant and make sure that police officers have the training that will help them change that behavior that is ingrained in them and may have been used for many, many years. The other reality is there's no other jurisdiction. There's no other jurisdiction that has fixed this. We are actually in the cutting edge in terms of having that legislation in place.
But it has lasted a very, very long time. And in fact, I'm proud of the work, the carding in Ontario.
A long time.
The problem that we've had in Ontario, though, is that it hadn't been addressed in many, many years. And in fact, it was the guy who's now the leader of the federal NDP who took up the banner in partnership with community voices to force the government to pay attention to this issue. And we're proud of that work, because you have to name it. When you see racism, you have to name it and then take responsibility to act. And for years and years, that action didn't happen. But we started naming.
The one thing about this whole idea, though, too, is they're talking about the racism that's there is, time and time again, the NDP and the Liberals have proven themselves to show more prejudice towards other groups than the Conservatives have, because the Conservatives have a very colorblind sort of view, you know. But it's always the NDP and the Liberals that want to separate people into groups. They're always the one, like, for instance, a perfect example is this was during the NDP, the federal leadership race that happened, I guess last fall, I think it was, when Jagmeet Singh was voted in. They were saying that you couldn't just get I think it was 500 signatures.
We were working very hard with community.
You can't just get the 500 signatures from members. I think they were. You need 500 signatures from either constituents or I think they may have been NDP members that said they wanted you on. But it couldn't just be the 500 members. It had to be this amount of men, this amount of women, this amount of the LGBT, this amount from an obvious minority group, this many from indigenous people. Like, they literally separated people into groups instead of just viewing them as part of the giant NDP family. And then we, anytime, like, what's going on, I know this is going on in America, but we can look at what's going on with Kanye West right now. Like, I have no love for Kanye West, but he starts spouting off a few pro-Trump messages, and the left completely turns on him. And they're even starting to talk about, like, making references to him being white. I think I saw an article the other day that said that Kanye West wants white freedom or something like that, whatever the fuck that means. So the parties on the left and the people on the left have shown themselves to actually be less tolerant to other people's ideas, especially when that happens to come from people from a minority group that don't share their ideas. For instance, like a black conservative, who are constantly called Uncle Toms, porch monkeys, token black guys, and on and on and on and on. Now, I'm not saying that that's specifically Andrea Horwath or Kathleen Wynne that does this, but the point is that the people who support them, who believe themselves to be tolerant and past the racism, actually separate people along racial lines and gender lines more than the conservatives ever fucking have. Now, let's see how long it takes to start. I just tried starting it again, so my guess is another, I don't know, 10 seconds or so before it actually takes.
To get the government's attention to say something has to be done. And I'm happy that something has been done, but we certainly know that the young people in the province, the ones I talk to anyways, tell me that they're still worried. They're still worried about not showing their ID when asked, because they don't know then if the next time that officer happens to be in the neighborhood, they're gonna, they're gonna be watched more carefully than everybody else.
And Andrea, I agree with you. That is an ingrained problem that you're right needs to be tackled. And let's just, so the NDP started something. The Tories wiped out, the Conservatives before us wiped out any rules around equity, took the word equity out of the education system, changed all the rules about how we would deal with racism in this province.
Years to put
equity.
No, it actually didn't. You know what?
Equity.
When I was Minister of Education in 2006, we reintroduced equity into the education curriculum.
You were taking families to court over autism.
That's just not true. That's not true.
I can't even pause it now.
We reintroduced the concept of equity and...
Jesus Christ. Okay, so she keeps going on about equity. That is that right there is one of those words to avoid. This should be one of those red flags as soon as someone says equity. There's a difference between equality and equity. Equality is equal opportunity. Equity is equal outcome. Now, equal outcome is exactly why we're facing a lot of the problems that we face today. And I'm actually worried that this is about to start up again. But this is actually one of the big problems that we face today, is because everyone wants equality of outcome. So it's not good enough that you have the same opportunities, but you have to be on the exact same level as somebody else. And that is where we're seeing a lot of the problems, because now, for instance, we have all these fields where they're saying that there's misogyny and male-dominated, when the real problem is that we don't have women who are willing to go into it, or this happens to be separated more along racial lines. There are preferences that people have. Now, I don't believe that it's so much separated along racial lines as it's separated amongst gender lines when we're talking about jobs and that sort. But the point is now that a good example is... There we go, it started up again. Fucking city news. But anyway, when we're talking about equity, it is like the example that many people like to use is they bring up the idea of a racetrack, in that when people run in the inside when people are on the outside of the track, they start further forward than the ones who are running on inside, and this is to offset the advantage that the person has on the inside because they are running a shorter track. Now, the thing is, though, is people like to use this as to stand for equity, but why this is actually a better example of equality is because the racers actually still run the same length of the track. Let's say that the track is 500 meters. So they have to run 500 meters around the track once. Well, what they have done is they've measured all the way around in each single row. So for everybody there. So that's why they start some people forward, because in the end, what they're going to end up doing. Sorry, I ended up muting it on OBS rather than keep trying to fight with City News. But anyway, the thing is about this idea is that the track runners end up running the exact same distance. That's the point of pushing some of them forward and pushing some of them back, is the fact they will both end up at the end of the day running 500 meters. So this is why the idea of equity is wrong. See, what would actually be equity is if you had a straight track, but you put the slower runners forward. You put them first, so they're actually running a shorter distance. You're giving them an advantage, an unfair advantage over the rest. So this is why the idea of equity and what Kathleen Wynne is talking about with equity is actually more unfair than the idea of equality, and is more dangerous than the idea of equality, because it means that you have to make sure that everything is absolutely equal every single time. Alright. This is starting to push 50 minutes, so I am actually going to call this the end for now, because we got through about half of it already, and there's still a little bit more to go. There's still about half the debate to go, but maybe I'll put that into a second part instead, because right now this is I'm getting a little tired of fighting with City News, number one. And we got through the main part of it. I don't want this video to be too long, so I'm actually going to end it right now. Maybe I'll come back tomorrow with part 2 where we finish it up. Although, I think at that point I'm going to use their YouTube channel instead. The thing why I didn't use it this time, their YouTube channel for it, was because, again, they hadn't actually clipped up even more than they did on their website. I think they had something like 10 or 11 clips. And I don't think it was the entire debate either, just judging from the time lengths of each clip. It really didn't seem like they were going to get the full debate in, so that's why I wanted to go actually and use I wanted to go on City News and use that, but again, the website is a piece of fucking shit, because my internet is actually pretty good. Like, I pay good money to have good internet and good broadband, but it's not working very well. But anyway, so that will conclude at least part 1 of the Ontario leaders debate, and again, I will come back, at least do a little bit of commentary with some of it tomorrow or maybe the day after. But already I can kind of tell this was not going to be as exciting as we hoped. It's not quite like the PC leadership debate where there was some mudslinging a little more than this. This was a lot more calm, and I'm actually a little disappointed that we didn't get to the point where Doug Ford makes some reference to Kathleen Wynne about having a good smile and not knowing math, because I really wanted to know that scene where all the feminists are freaking out, calling him mansplaining and misogynist. I couldn't help but laugh when I was watching. I saw that when I was scrolling through my Twitter after I tried streaming it. God, that was a fucking fail, that stream. So I ended up renaming it too. It's now called Laugh at My Pain as I fail to stream the debate. I ended up changing it around because I also didn't want to give some people that hadn't seen it yet, the wrong impression that it had the whole debate on it. This is why I decided to do this offline. I don't know, man. I guess maybe it was just my computer was running too much, and it was just couldn't load the web page properly, or maybe it was because a lot of people were saying that they were having trouble with City News too for broadcasting it. A lot of people weren't very happy too between the cutting of the clips, the way the stream ran. So I don't think City News did a good job with this debate whatsoever. I really hope that they don't have the next debate. I don't know when the next debate is, but it's supposed to be 3 that are scheduled before the June 7th election. So just a month away now. So actually, my last message before I go is that for anybody, it is now about that time when you need to start registering for the election. Now, if you haven't done it yet, you should probably get on that. And I'm being a little bit hypocritical because I haven't registered yet. But this election is going to be important in order to force out Kathleen Wynne, which seems pretty easy to do with Doug Ford's support, but it more has to do with how many people say they're going to vote and then don't show up. So we'll see how everything goes, but I hope that the next debate has a little more meat to it, a little more mudslinging. I like a little bit of entertainment with my debates. Maybe we should, well, I guess we can't anymore. I was going to say, maybe we should put them on Worski's channel for a little blood sports, but I guess we can't do that anymore. Oh, well. Well, thank you all for tuning in for part 1 of the Ontario Leaders Debate. I'm Adrian Lloyd. This is just my stupid opinion.